We have with us Sister Waddy already, but I'll be introducing her later after around next 10-15 minutes. So we are very fortunate that she's already joined with us. And so let me just do the routine things as we go ahead. We'll just share the churning points, which Brother Eric had shared last time in the talk for us. Uh, the beautiful festival of Rakhi he mentioned, I think it was his birth in the knowledge also through the Raksha Bandhan, which he mentioned. And it's like a divine cuff. No one likes cuffs actually, but this is a divine cuff, and it's between God and me, and it helps me in keeping myself safe from the Ravan. In India, particularly the ones who have joined from India, you all know all the mythological stories of Ramayana and Mahabharata. So in Ramayana, it has been shown that Sita was said not to cross the line, which we call the line of code of conduct. And that is in one way to maintain your inner purity. Because otherwise, if you do that, if you cross the line, there's someone waiting to grab you. And that's what happened. So he also mentioned that, remember, on a physical level, we may not know each other, because today also we see quite a few new souls on our platform here. But on a spiritual level, brother mentioned that we're all very connected to each other, because we are that, as I said before as well, those eternal conscient energy. We are all that eternal ones, which is in Hindi we say Avinashi, and we are not perishable at all, because on a soul level we are connected. Actually, Brother Eric gave us a very different perspective of purity, and he mentioned that it's not an easy virtue to understand. He also mentioned it's very tricky, the purity. Why? Because looking at other virtues or values, he gave us the example that other virtues are very famous and acceptable. Like people say, I want peace of mind, I want to be happy, I want to be light, but never people say, oh, I wish to be pure. So in that context, it's a bit difficult to understand this virtue. Nevertheless, it's the most powerful unknown energy in the world. And just to remind you, at the Brahma Kumaris, in one of our teachings, it is said that purity is the mother of peace and happiness. If I can say it in Hindi, Pavitrata Sukh Shanti ki janani hai. So if you're pure inside, particularly what we have been discussing in the last half hour is about having purity of thoughts, word, and actions. So if I'm pure in all these three levels, then I don't really need to hide anything inside. And if I don't have to hide, I don't have to think what I have to speak, because there's a sync between what I'm thinking and what I'm speaking. I'm concordant, I'm not discordant. Then automatically I feel very light, and peace and happiness radiate from me. He beautifully mentioned about the word Atma and atom. Again, Atma is a Sanskrit word which means the soul, and atom is, we say, the most smallest part of anything, any being. So when an atom is broken, we know there's powerful energy coming out, and that's the genesis of all these atom bombs. All of us know that. So the energy which is released by fixing the broken Atma, the broken soul, we have broken our connection with our inner being, then it really becomes very powerful. And that purity is one way to connect back that broken connection which we have had. And he mentioned us, I think we should keep churning, and Sister Waddy will cover that for us in detail, that do we really become pure, or is purity already in the soul? That applies to any virtue for that matter. But specifically looking at purity, are we really trying to become, or it's a part of our system already? As I mentioned, purity is the mother of all the virtues. And brother mentioned that we have got used to using the vices. Like nowadays, it's what we call our comfort zones. That it is considered to be irritated and frustrated if things are not going the way I should want them to be. It's fine if there is a death in a family to be unhappy, right? Because it's a sad incident for me. So I think when I say happiness, and when I also compare this with peace of mind, both these together, as I already alluded to before, that this is also being impure. If you're becoming unhappy or sad, if you're being peaceless, not being able to maintain your calm, that is impurity on a very deeper level. Certain values are about our ability to express our qualities, but purity is actually the mother, as we said. So it is really the very, very important fundamental nature of our existence. Then brother went ahead and said that particularly at Brahma Kumaris, when we start adopting a pure lifestyle, we are very dogmatic about our purity, and that can risk your relationships. I'll give you an example. Sometimes when we start looking at pure food, the sattvic food which we are wanting to consume, and we are just one of us in knowledge at home, and we are so dogmatic about this that no, I don't want to eat from anyone else's hand. So it's not it's not good to just reveal it like that. It has to be yukti yukt, what is taught here, that you have to be very tactful when you want to implement your principles of purity at home as well, because that can sometimes break your relationships, and then it will be said, oh, these are pure people and they are trying to break relationships with us. Does it match? Not really. And therefore it's said that sometimes we try too hard to become pure instead of realizing that we already have that virtue within. We all now need to discover it back. So we need to rediscover it and release it. Or I must say, realize, as brother said. Real eyes, a beautiful word. Real eyes. What are my real eyes? Eyes means the eyes, and real is something which is true. So what is my true nature? What is my true core? Then going back, sorry for the font, a bit changed. Uh, Brother shared a few other personal experiences of his life. His mother died suddenly, so he had reaction to God. He said, God, I don't believe in God, whoever is God, he can't do this to me. Then also he mentioned a few things about the codes of purity, which I was saying in Hindi, we call it Maryada ki Lakir. But again, in English, it's the purity codes, which I was again mentioning about Sita. The code of line was drawn, the line or the code was drawn. So people really try to identify each other with their physical appearances. So when you look at the white dress, people wearing white, or even people having a particular hairstyle or a haircut or something which is physically. So it is not about the physical appearances, it is about internally how you are. And brother mentioned that the root of all conflicts are again these two. The first two vices, what we call the lust and anger. And closely related to them, if you lose them, you really become impure. And he mentioned that what he learned at Brahma Kumaris when he joined was Raj Yoga. So he mentioned these three words, Raja, Yoga, and purity. Because we have a nice slogan in Hindi here. We say Yogi Bhava, Pavitra Bhava, which means the more you become connected to God, that's yoga, the more you start becoming pure. And I think it's vice versa as well. The more you start inculcating purity, the more your connection with the God, with the divine strengthens. And also then you become Raja, which means you become a king of all your sense organs. That's what he mentioned. He also mentioned purity is all about liberty. You can churn on that, how it is very liberating to experience purity. And it's our old sanskars, our old habits, our old personality traits which make us impure. And the last slide is, he gave a nice corollary. He mentioned that let us try to catch the correct frequency. Brother has been involved, Brother Eric, involved in a lot of radio and TV programs, and also in TV journalism. So he was trying to connect it that way, that just as we change a radio station with just a little turn on the knob, similarly, vices and purity are also frequencies that we can catch. So intrinsically, we are all pure, but somehow under the influence of vices, the knob goes to that channel and then it's all gone for a big toss. So he said that purity is all inside internally, and the more we are connected, so the more we tune our frequency to that pure energy, which is the divine energy, it becomes easier to connect. And the main basis of this, again, Sister Waddy would be covering, is meditation. You focus on yourself as this inner, pure, conscient being of light, and then purity, you start feeling that purity inside, because it's all about experiencing that. One more thing he mentioned, which people say that you have to abstain from things. So it's not about, you can't force people to abstain and maintain purity. You can always obviously advise them, but it's their life journey, their decision. And he said that the next step was to bring about in the experience, and that experience is, again, as we have covered in the last half hour, of purity in our thoughts, words, and action on a daily basis. Obviously, on day one, we are all sitting in an environment here which is very conducive. We are all sitting today with the same motto of experiencing purity. But the moment we go tomorrow in challenging atmosphere outside, as Sister Shruti went into the visualization mode with y'all, we get challenging people. We get people who confront us, who challenge our sanskars, our habits. So at that point of time, am I able to maintain that inner purity still? So brother mentioned in the end that we have to move from an experience of purity to an expression. Very beautiful two words in Hindi. I found that experience is anubhav. So experiencing, so I know I have experienced that in meditation, but unless and until I express it in my interactions with people, which is in Hindi we call anukaran, both start with the word anu, anubhav and anukaran. So though I'm experiencing purity, unless I express it in my interactions with people around, they won't be able to get that pure energy from me. So this was Brother Eric's quote, that purity is a frequency that already exists within you, and you just have to tune into that. And we had time only for 2 questions, so I'll just take those 2 questions which brother had answered. That if I'm providing for my family and doing the best I can, then do I need to really renounce everything to experience that purity? Like, do I need to become a sadhu sannyasi, like an ascetic, just go to the caves of Himalayas, renounce everything? So he said, no, purity is not about what we do. It is about the energy that we exude in our life, particularly in our interactions. And he also mentioned about checking the quality of, again, those 3 things which will keep coming all the time: thoughts, word, and actions. Enjoy life, but check your quality of thoughts, that while my interaction with people, I'm saying good things to them on the face. But if my thought inside is not good, I remember Sister Shivani here, she says, here we have a converter. Like, I'm saying good things on the face to them, but inside I'm not thinking good about them. So I don't think I'm being pure that time. So it's a process. You have to give it time and it will happen. And the more we start tuning into that inner frequency, it will become a natural part of my nature. And the second question was, how can one get rid of impurities that are deeply embedded in the subconscious mind? So basically, it's all those, as we are mentioning, the habits and sanskars. They are my innate impurities, which are there deeply embedded. So how do we get rid? So brother said the basic solution is go deeper into silence. At Brahma Kumaris, we are also taught this very much. We regularly have those silence retreats. So you can also, you're welcome to attend one of them soon. We'll be announcing that later. So, you know, this energy of silence is at one level, and the other energy is of science. So here we are taught that both of these energies are highly powerful. Science will help you in inventing and discovering something externally from outside. And silence is which will take you something inside. It will make you go inside your depth and really rediscover yourself. And also we are taught here the ashariri sthiti in Hindi, which means in English the bodiless stage. So as you start becoming more and more silent, you start getting connected to the inner core, the inner being, and then that will help you to establish, or rather strengthen your connection with the divine. And then all those sanskars which are there, which we are finding very difficult to get rid of, they will automatically be burnt. What we again call here, there's a different type of meditation which we do. The meditation is called Volcanic Meditation. We also call in Hindi the Jwala Swarup meditation. That will help us in burning away, because if there is anything which is set fire to, it burns, the impurity goes off. So it's only by going in silence that we can get rid of these. And with this, I'll stop here and I'll invite our very much awaited speaker. And before I go on to asking her to give a talk, let me just introduce, because it's the first time that Sister Waddy has joined us. Many people don't know about her, so I'll be speaking briefly about Sister Waddy. Her name is actually Veronica, and she's affectionately known as Sister Waddy, and she's the director of the Brahma Kumaris in the state of Florida. She coordinates the activities there. And just for your information, she was one of the very first Western students somewhere in 1974, where it was Dadi Janki who inspired her in London. And then she had a profound experience in Madhuban, in Mount Abu. And after that, she decided to dedicate her life fully to Brahma Kumaris. And there on her journey is, since more than 45 years, she's a regular practitioner and a teacher of, senior teacher, I must say, of Brahma Kumaris. She has held a lot of events and has spoken at many events in all over the world actually, but more so in the South Florida. And also Sister Veronica is an active member of something called Images and Voices of Hope. It's called IVOH, IVO, Images and Voices of Hope. And she's been involved in these events, coordinating all of them and being a core team member of that for almost over 20 years now. And as always, I always end the introduction with a poem or a quote. So I'll just say a few words more about Sister Waddy. Sister Waddy's original name is Veronica McHugh, and she's got a personality so huge. McHugh and huge. She's based now in the city of Miami, but we have never seen her saying me, me, me. It's always us, the divine. Having interacted with her has been so humbling, and with her spiritual support, she helps people from stumbling. Humbling and stumbling. Making Dadi Janki her mentor and companion, she's established with God the firm union. So the state of Florida will never forget her contribution because it's utmost purity at the core of her foundation. Lastly, she's an active member of the IVO, as I said before, Images and Voices of Hope. And when we meet her, everyone has got scope. She advises us to be away from the bioscope, all the gadgets, and look at ourselves with a microscope. She's indeed very well known far and wide because she's kept always the Almighty by her side, which in turn has kept always Maya aside. And I'm sure you'll experience that she's indeed so humble with no trace of pride. And with her insightful talks, she'll take you on this beautiful ride and help all of us to take our own stride, but still giving us directions as a helpful guide. So there you are. We have Sister Waddy with us. I'll stop sharing the screen and over to Sister Waddy. Thank you. I think it's, yeah.
All right. Brother Manoj, I don't know you in terms of having met you before that I'm aware of, but believe me, in your recitation of that delightful poem, you were telling me more about yourself than what you were saying about me. So thank you for that. You're evidently skilled and articulate, and you're a professional, you're a scientist, you're a consummate teacher and organizer. And without meeting you, as I say, I feel that that I've known you for a very long time. And so thank you very much for that introduction. What I would like to do is to go to the remove the spotlight so that I can see all of you, or at least I can see some of you. And may I just ask for a moment or two of silence before we get started. It's almost as if we have digested one quantity of words, even whilst anticipating another. And I go to the core of myself. which is organic and unpolluted. Almost like the Saraswati River. We know it's there, underground, but how to access it. And yet, the confidence that we shall. Om Shanti. So, good morning, good evening, good afternoon to each of you. All of you, as I was listening, are philosophers and yogis, are travelers on the path, and no doubt have the pure intention to keep growing yourself and being the inspiration for others, either to commence their growth or to elaborate. And so we are all spiritual friends, in a sense, connected by vibrations. And it's an ancient idea that the purity of the holy man and woman in whatever tradition, as well as serving their personal journey, that it also helped support the world to some extent. But ultimately, it wasn't sufficient to stop the decline. And so now, even while in other faith traditions, they bemoan the fact that people are not becoming priests anymore. People are not becoming nuns. In other words, so many less vocations than what there had been even whilst I was growing up. And so in a strange kind of a way, here are all of us, the majority of whom, no doubt, live in the world and go about raising their families, following their occupations or their professions. And so in a kind of a way, we are the vocations of this time. And that without any fanfare or taking vows, we have made an internal commitment, a covenant even, with God to assist not only in supporting the world, but in transforming it. And I recall in my very early days of involvement with the Brahma Kumaris, which actually started in 76, not 74, but 76, when I heard the teachings, and this was directly from the Supreme Teacher, and it touched my heart, and it was a request. It wasn't a demand or an order. And we were being addressed as children in this incarnation. And I would have been in my 20s, somebody else could have been in their 50s, somebody else could have been a teenager. in this incarnation and for whatever time of it is left, help me with your purity. And it was something that really, really resonated with me, because before that, I might have seen it as just something that I would do perhaps personally to aid my own journey, but that it was actually something that conjoined with others would become a force for goodness, for transformation, not only of whatever had accumulated or accrued that was less than pure within my own self, but that it even extended to the possibility of transforming nature itself, transforming the whole world. It touched me, but did I grasp it entirely at that moment in time? Of course not. Of course not. You know, I even remember before coming to the Brahma Kumaris, and I would call myself, I suppose, in retrospect, I would have said that I was a seeker, that I was definitely a pilgrim, and that I was looking for something. Not quite sure what it was, but the confidence that I would recognize it when I found it. And one of the things within that, strangely enough, was the idea of celibacy. I wasn't necessarily thinking of it for my own self, but there was a knowing that if I were to become the pupil of a teacher, and of course, unknowingly, I assumed that any teacher would be male. That was until I arrived at the door of the Brahma Kumaris. But I remember I was in Africa, and there was a very wise man, and he had a different spin on aspects of the Bible, which I really related to. And so I was very happy to be in his company and to learn from him, until I discovered that although this man was much older than I was, maybe he might have been in his 50s. He seemed old to me at that time. And his wife had died, but he was now about to get married to someone who was about 20 years old, one of his followers. And it somehow didn't connect for me that he was teaching something, and yet he was under the influence of someone else, or that he was dependent. Because one thing I felt that I knew, that in my seeking, that I would get to a point where there was no longer a dependency for my joy or for my pleasure or my escape through either, it could have been alcohol, it could have been drugs, it could have been an intimate relationship. And so I knew the answer wasn't in any of those things. I now understand how I foresaw that there would be a point in time, and I thought all yogis had this facility. I hadn't met the Brahma Kumaris yet, but what I understood to be yogis, that they were completely independent from others, and that their bliss and their joy came from their inner life, that it was sourced like the Saraswati River from deep, deep inside. And yet it would then become apparent from the way they conducted themselves in the world that they were being fed by that purest and highest source. So that's just a little anecdote of leading up to coming to the Brahma Kumaris. When I was thinking about this, was it the value of purity, meaning the worth of purity, or purity as a value? And I was just ruminating on the difference between values and virtues, because whether in terms of religion or cultures, whatever else, there can be some agreed values, universal values. But then again, something that one religion gives value to, another religion may not, you know. And so values at one level seem to me, and even as I was listening to all of you speaking, and you were sharing very profound things, and I wonder if the value, which could just be inspirational, you know, this country is based supposedly on values, as is any of your countries. And so if we were living those values, would there be any question of homelessness? Would there be any question of jails, of a justice system? Of course not. And so the challenge is to turn the values into virtues. In other words, that I'm living them. So it's a little bit like saying, you know, here's an apple, and I can give you all of the nutritional value of that apple and how it's going to support your health or whatever. And then I throw it away. If I don't ingest it and digest it, then just talking about it is not going to give me the benefit of it. And so this question that was posed, is it the quality of purity? Is it there anyway? Or do I have to learn it, relearn it, imbibe it? And I think there's a case for both things. But ultimately, if we're taking it to its highest possible, you know, denominator, then it is not something I can do by myself. I feel another energy is needed. And now, not for the sake of being the devil's advocate, but I just want to look at this in a little bit of a different way. And we are extolling the value of purity. And most of you that I see are already students, however new or however long, with the Brahma Kumaris. And so one of the very first things that you would have learned, and you learned it so well that you've never forgotten it, and that is the original qualities of the soul. And very simply, they are put in terms of 5 things. And it's the same for every human soul. And that's peace, purity, love, bliss, and you can say knowledge, or you can say truth, or you can say wisdom. And I would like to challenge that a little bit and suggest that that purity is not a stand-alone quality. Rather, it's a descriptor of the highest form of all the other qualities. In other words, pure peace. What kind of peace do I want? Pure peace, pure bliss, pure knowledge or pure truth, pure, what am I missing here? Love. Good heavens, how could I have missed that? What kind of love do you want? I want pure love. I don't want a mixture. And so then what would I replace purity with? What I would replace it with, and I have to say, it is something very near and dear to my heart. You know, because when you use this word purity, certainly in a Western context, it has a very moralistic connotation. And people do not hear it very well, because it almost suggests that you're impure, you know, and as we're shown, that's not any way to approach another human being, by telling them that they're not pure or that they're impure. And it just shows my arrogance and my ignorance, if that's my approach. And so I would suggest that the quality that is inherent in all souls, and people respond to this much more quickly when suggested, and that is innocence. Innocence is the original nature of the soul. And I think when you say purity, you really mean innocence. And so what is innocence? You know, it is uncorrupted. It doesn't harbor anything other than its natural state of being. And when it comes to innocence, there's a beauty, and we have so many examples in front of us. We've all seen that quality, and we rarely, even when we see our great yogis, we don't normally say, oh, they're so pure. It's not a word that I tend to use to describe them. I'll say they're so loving, they're so powerful, they're so peaceful. Even some, they're so innocent, not naive, not to be confused with naivete, but they're so innocent. And so that means, you know, there's even this idea, you have it very strongly in Hinduism, and to some extent in Christianity, where God is sometimes shown as a baby, you know, and what is more pure and what is more innocent than a baby, you know, and there's no question of impurity. And so then I would say that those were the natural qualities of the soul. But what happened? You know, what happened to that pure love, that pure peace, that pure truth? I guess, and ultimately no one's to blame, but it's just that our explorations in our wanting to, I sometimes think that it was, you know, curiosity that took me away from my origins. I wanted to see what was over there, or, And then, of course, in our journeying, and the journeying, we didn't know when we commenced that our journey would be long-winded and take us through lifetimes and take us through a multitude of experiences and religions and genders and everything else, only to bring us back to the starting point, you know. But some little things had to happen for me to get that thought that it's time to go back. The return journey has commenced. And what am I looking for? A guide, a true guide, a pure-hearted guide that is going to show me truthfully and simply the way to get back there again. And so this is why all of us are on the earth at the present time, because of our willingness to make that commitment, that covenant with the Supreme One, the one that's remembered as the Purifier, so that we can return and aid and help others to get there too. You know, there's a very nice story that that I sometimes tell, and because I've just mentioned the purifier, the idea of the one who purifies, and this is from the Old Testament, and wherein God is referred to as the refiner and purifier of silver, right? So some ladies, you know, reading the scriptures together, they felt they needed to find out, why was this expression, this title being given to God? How would they understand that in terms of themselves? And so she went along to a silversmith, and he walked her through the process. And the process was such that the silver, along with the various impurities, were held over the heat, and not just any old heat, but intense fire. And the silversmith, all the while, had to keep his eye on this process that was taking place, because had he turned away, then in 1 second it would have been too hot and everything would have been destroyed, including the silver. And she wanted to know, as regards the refiner and purifier of silver, how will you know when it's ready? And the silversmith answered her very simply, and he said, that's easy. When I can see my reflection in it. And so that idea of the Supreme being with us, we are in the process. Yes, it's a process. And you understand it more as you go along, of being refined, so that we can reflect the purity and the benevolence. Because this is the thing with any of these original qualities, they automatically contain benevolence. They are by their nature givers. And of course, we've gotten ourselves in trouble by taking too much, by being greedy, by complicating things. You know, I was hearing on the news yesterday, or seeing, it was on the BBC site, And no surprises, you know, again, purity means, to me, means organic, means original, means authentic. And despite maybe our attempts at improving the lot of humanity, that sometimes our experimentation or where we arrive at create more damage than help. And so yesterday for me, and it's like one of the smallest things, and it was about insects, you know, because there is, again, what is natural? The world is no longer natural. You know, it has moved out of its natural orbit, if you like, and we can't trust the seasons anymore. You know, we can't trust the winds or anything else. And so what had happened, and I guess the experiment was done in the countryside in England, and they had these hedgerows, right? And these hedgerows are normally and naturally filled with the life of insects, you know, in the ground, on the branches, on the leaves, everything else. But sometime prior, they had installed, you know, to facilitate driving or for safety purposes, LED streetlights, you know. And it caught my attention because somebody did the same thing here, pretty much in front of the center. And that light shines straight into our dining room all night long, unless you pull the blinds, you know. And I had understood that even trees need to sleep at night, you know, within nature, with the exception of things like owls and maybe some other creatures. Everything goes to sleep at night and they rise with the dawn. That's nature, that's natural. And so what they had found with the trees is that where there's bright lights, that those trees don't grow properly. It's like something's missing. And trees do have, as someone recently wrote a book on, The Secret Lives of Trees, and their very complex family system and how they support each other. But in this instance, with the insects, what they had found, and I won't get into the detail of how they arrived at it, but suffice to say, in a comparative study where there were these lights, then the insect population had deteriorated in terms of numbers markedly so, you know, like something like it had been reduced by about 57%. And so what we're seeing is the whole thing of, you know, value itself has changed. What we give value to now is not the things we give value to in olden days. And I'm not suggesting we go back, but time would have had a different value. Farmers would have had a different value, but now it seems to be all to do with a particular type of currency, you know. And this is a foreign currency in terms of the soul, because the soul needs to deal in the currency. Some of you mentioned this thing of the, what was it? Not appreciation. What was the word you used? Gratitude, the language of gratitude. And so we're not grateful for the right things anymore. And it kind of diminishes them. And that everything now is about, you know, the almighty dollar or rupee or pound, whatever it happens to be. And so then this is the world at this time, that these qualities that we traded them in, if you like, thinking that by taking on ego and anger and impurity and so on, that they would give us happiness, they would give us peace, they would give us joy, they would bring us love. But it doesn't work like that, you know, that dirty water is never going to nourish the body in the same way that pure water. And for the purest water, you have to go to the source. And so this is where we find ourselves today. So all of the things that were said, I don't know that I can add to it. I'm remembering someone, because this came up in your conversation too, about when someone is, say, defaming you or behaving badly with you. We were advised in a recent morning class not to see it as a bad thing, and this image has stayed with me, but rather to feel that that person is pushing your swing. They are making you go higher. And I think to say, you know, I would equate maybe purity with another difficult word, which is perfect. And once, maybe about a year or so ago, in one of our morning classes, our main teacher, the Supreme, used this expression that perfect means beyond effect. And I think that also is the nature of purity, that there's an innocence in purity. And there's wonderful stories in the Hindu scriptures of Shiva, you know, and how his innocence, you know, even when the house that he had built for Parvati, when it came to paying for it, and the builder said, well, I want the house. And Shiva said, okay, you can take it. You know, that he didn't see in terms of the constructs of society. He wasn't beholden to the constructs of society, but that had a much larger frame of reference that could only be said to be a complete and utter generosity, that was able to even take the poison that the ocean was spewing and consider that whatever was being given was a gift, you know. And I remember Daddy Janki in a situation where someone came to Daddy and told Daddy that they had just received a letter of complaints from, I guess, maybe from the students that she was teaching, but you know, and of course she was a little distraught by it, but of course, going to Daddy Janki, you're going to the right person. And Daddy said to her, you know, don't allow it to, if you're affected by it, by what they're saying, then you will not be able to give them what God has given you. And so this thing of the level of vibration and the thing of generosity and the aspect of flow, and it's deciding for your own self, because in a sense, when you withhold your goodness, when you withhold your charity, your benevolence, your forgiveness, any of those things, what you're in effect saying is, I can't afford this. I can't afford to give you any more love. I can't afford to be any more compassionate. And so it's almost like there's another energy out there that ostensibly you could say is listening to that. And it's like, okay, if that's how you feel, that's how we'll do it. Only this much. Whereas if it's like, I'm going to need some courage. I'm going to need something maybe to draw on something that I don't feel I have the fullness of at the moment. But by the very intention to do that, it's like as if the gates of heaven open up to you and make that energy accessible. And so on the one hand, that, I could say that purity is just simply back to this first teaching of the Brahma Kumaris, I'm a soul. I'm eternal, rather than, seeing myself in the context of my gender. And today there's such a wrestling with issues of gender that every single soul at some level is trying to answer that question, who am I, And of course, with the idea of purity, the idea, it's not that I am, and of course, chastity is something that's always been valued. But ultimately, and the paradox is that chastity is valued particularly in a female, but often it's only so that someone can take it away. That's the paradox there. But that I'm not my biology, even though I'm influenced by my biology, whatever is my gender. And I'm not my biography, because very often our biology can dictate our biography. And so in the context of meditation, you're being invited, I was thinking of it, instead of looking out the front door or the back door, it's like, come up the stairs and then come on up into the attic and look out through the skylight, and your perception is huge. Down here, not so much, and you can see things coming from a distance. You open the front door, you can only see the person who's standing there, but you go up there, you can see them coming miles off, and you can decide whether to invite them in or that your door is closed to them, depending on the effect and the influence that they are likely to have on you. So this thing of not being impressed by others, it is amazing to me how the Supreme One, with such patience and such gentleness and awareness, and without criticism or removing his affection or way of seeing us, nurtures us so kindly into being ourselves, because he understands what has happened since we moved away from our origins, and how we gradually, without intending, became corrupted. But he didn't say we were, beyond being redeemed. And so what the journey is, yes, it is back to love and to peace and all of those good things. But it's also about embracing yourself. It's about knowing yourself, not through your karmic account, or not through somebody else's opinion of you, you know, because very often what happens, depending on how much you allow them to influence you, their opinion of you will become your opinion of you. And then where are you? You've just tied a tighter knot. And so the only one, the only being that is outside of the universe and that is beyond the laws of karma, that never loses one iota of his purity, even in dealing with the impure world at the present time. That's the way that I want to see myself, how that being sees me. And that being only sees me with charity, with kindness, with forgiveness as his own, and molds me to the extent that I give permission to become more aligned with him and his vision for me and for my human family and for the whole world. So maybe we leave it there. I think in terms of time, and again, somebody else mentioned it, and a quality that's very, very, very dear to my own heart is that of freedom. And so that freedom to be yourself without hesitation, without fear, and knowing that where you are at this moment in time, if not completely perfect, is good enough as you move towards that perfection. Om Shanti.
Thank you so much. I was just engrossed taking a few notes. I'll just sum up. It was beautiful, this expression. I just loved it when you said that I am not the biology or the biography. It's a beautiful one. I'm that inner conscient, pure being. And also a very revealing thing was that purity is not a standalone quality. It is really an amalgamation or maybe conglomeration of all the qualities together.
Yeah.
And one more thing which you said was again new for me. Purity is the foreign currency of the soul. We need to really churn on this point. And other things were really fantastic.
Oh no, purity is not the foreign currency.
Okay.
It's the impurity that's the foreign currency.
Okay, I took it in the other way.
Yeah.
Fine. So I think the time is just coming a bit close. We have with us our two seniors. We have Dr. Ashok Mehta with us and also Sister
Hello,
Claudia.
Dr. Mehta. How nice to see you.
Yeah. And
How's
also
the
Sister
family?
Claudia. Yeah. Sorry.
Sorry,
So, that's fine. That's fine.
I haven't seen him in a year and a half, and his lovely Yugal and his daughter and his son-in-law.
I think Dr. Mehta can just carry on with the proposal of vote of thanks. And also he was very eager to meet you because I think he spent time in Miami as well with you.
That's right. Om Shanti. Hello, Claudia.
Oh, it's nice to see you.
You too. Opposite corners.
What a pleasure to hear you in depth. I never knew Veronica, so today I came to know Veronica as well, with lots of experiences ranging across the world. And I think what's interesting to me was the equivalent of purity was innocence. And that also innocence of a child. And that's beautiful, I think.
It is. And I find people relate to it when I substitute it in terms of the original qualities. Purity, they have difficulty with because, as I say, it's a moralistic sort of a thing. But innocence, they all relate to it, and it's one of the titles for God, the innocent Lord. And that idea, not only that he's not guilty of anything, but completely uncorrupted. Yeah, I'm innocent.
Become absolutely the pure soul, and how we get contaminated or maybe influenced by everything that's around us. I think we've enjoyed your talk. Thank you very much for taking us through a whole spectrum of purity. Very much.
No, thank you.
It's very nice to see how you put in a different aspects of purity and really bring us so much, open so much to think about. So it was very nice to hear. Like always, when we hear you, it's always very pleasure for us. So
Thank you, Claudia.
for being with us today is very nice.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, both of you. I would just now share the screen, and before we go on to the meditation with Sister Waddy, I'll just share the screen and do a few announcements very quickly. Yes, but it doesn't, actually it goes on till Diwali. So it's 2.5, 3 months. So in this, the first one now after Raksha Bandhan is Janmashtami. As I said, the birth of this very pure soul, Sri Krishna, the first soul of the golden age. So we are very fortunate that we have Sister Shilu, the Shilu Didi, I must say, from Madhuban, a very senior Raj Yoga teacher, and she'll be sharing all the wisdom on the spiritual significance of the festival. That's going to be next weekend, 4th September, Saturday for us in the morning. And continuing with our Values for Life series talks, so it will be the patience, we call it Dhairyata in Hindi. It will be to suit Brother Charlie's time, because he's joining us, and I don't like to ask people to do a recorded session, so it's good to interact live with them. So just to suit his time and all of us comfortably, it will be 9 o'clock morning, just a few alterations. Otherwise, the timing remained the same. So it's 5th September, the next day after the Janmashtami talk. And we'll be again sending you the emails and invites soon. And with that, again, after that, we have with us Sister Shreya, the usual workshop which we do as we are doing today on patience. Sister Shreya is again another face of Brahma Kumaris in India. People know her very well through the various programs on the televisions. And it will be the same time as we are doing today. And this is a very elegant calendar. Thanks to Anu sister for contributing this time. I would not spend a lot of time on this, but just to give you a glimpse of our Values for Life series, which are fortnightly, and followed by that, the fortnightly workshops which we do. And also we have special events, Janmashtami this time, and also the famous Ganesh Chaturthi festival coming, as Sister Waddy reminded us of Shiva and Parvati. So how can we forget Ganesha, their own child? So with this, I'll just stop sharing the screen, and we request now Sister Waddy to take us in the meditation. Should I play some soft music in the background? Is that okay?
Whatever you normally do, you're the expert. I trust you completely, Manoj. Even the music is calling me back. Inviting me. Reminding me. Drawing like a magnet. The residue of all my original qualities. each one having lost its power of purity on the soul's long, long journey. But now the light is lit. I've released the burdens and whatever had bound me to gravity. Separation. That robbed me of my self-worth, and of my place as a contributor, as a support. All that is changing as I release into peace. As if doors within myself that were closed and bolted swing open. And the stream, crystal clear and pure, flowing gently, fills my mind. Cleansing and nourishing. This is who I am. This is where there is contentment. And the soul regains its rightful place. Worthy to be in front of and to be seen by the Supreme. And to accept the title of eternal child. I have returned to innocence. Om Shanti.
Thank you so much, Mr. Waddy.
Thank
And
you for
Anu,
the invitation.
and over to Anu, sister, for anything, the last proceedings.
Om Shanti, Sister Waddy. Such an amazing session. We always benefit, and today was extraordinary to
Who's
understand.
speaking? Who's speaking? I don't see who's speaking. Okay,
This
Om
is Anu.
Shanti. Yes, hello Anu.
Yeah, I'm speaking from Vancouver, Canada. And it's really, I just don't have words to express such an amazing session today, listening to you, the purity and innocence. So we all are very happy. And every time we take this moment, save it for ourselves with a picture. So we would request all, I would all to open their videos so that we can make it a memorial for us that Sister Waddy was with us and explained so beautifully the purity. So everyone have to come out with the purity of innocence of our original self. I'll still give few seconds for whoever want to open up their videos.
Yes, can you take a screenshot and send it to me, Anu? And we can use it
Definitely,
in,
yes.
thank you. And we can use it in our service news. Coming up, we're nearly at the end of the month.
Will be very
Anyway,
pleased.
very, very nice to meet you all, particularly Manoj Bhai for the first time.
Thank you for your
And
presence.
where is Pooja from?
In India.
No, that
India.
I know.
Central
Which
India.
country? Where?
There's a city called Nagpur in central India.
Nagpur. Gee. I know of Nagpur. Yeah, okay.
So that's great. Anything else? We have got the pictures and everybody will be receiving that along with all the review materials.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Om Shanti, everyone. Bye-bye.
Om Shanti. Om Shanti.
Good day. Bye-bye.